The time loop, as a game mechanic, has gotten some excellent recognition over the past decade. With the boom of the roguelike genre, everyone's pretty familiar with the idea of starting from the beginning again upon reaching any kind of failure condition. But on a much rarer scale than that kind of game, we see the concept of going back in time tie into the narratives and the mechanics. It sounds daunting to imagine keeping someone's attention towards a mechanic that will involve going back through the content that they've already seen from you before. It's why a roguelike is easier to conceptualize, since you can utilize things like randomization and the player's own increasing familiarity and skill to maintain interest through gameplay that wants to be repeated. Whereas when a narrative is involved, it imposes a lot more tension on the player's immersion. If story moments have to be repeated, it can quickly transform from engaging writing to a test of mashing through the dialogue so you can get to the new stuff. There are undoubtedly a lot of good games that utilize a time loop to make an interesting story along with maintaining interesting gameplay. But with my most recently played game, I wanted to tell you about two that not only need the time loop to make their stories work, but they work as two sides of a coin concerning the same existential thought brought by the story mechanic. Given an endlessly repeating time period where everything stays the same, what would drive you forward? Just as a warning, by the way, I'll be talking about these games in a level of detail that is technically spoilers. You'll encounter most of this information very early on in the game, and if anything, I want to use it in a context that entices you to buy and play the game yourself to actually see what happens. With one of the games in particular, it stands extra important that I tell you just enough to get you interested, and as little more as possible on top of that. That all being said, Outer Wilds is a game that lives in the moment. You play as an alien nicknamed the Hatchling from a race known as the Hearthians on your home planet Timber Hearth, and you pick up right as you're beginning your training to become the planet's next exploratory astronaut. The vibe is cozy. The kids want to play hide and seek with you before your trip, you try out some tests to get you acquainted with some basics of space travel, you get a view of the galaxy you'll be set to explore, you're given the launch codes for your ship, you commune with the goat statue who beams astral hieroglyphics into your puny skull reminding you of your mortality. The standard video game fare, I'm sure you're aware. With you being a freshly trained pilot of an advanced spacecraft, it's only natural you'd hop right into your ship and do really good at your first flight. You wake up the same as you did at the very beginning. Talking to people results in what you would expect. Most people chalk it up to you being very anxious about your first flight. Maybe rightfully. Aside from that, that's all you get. You remember the launch codes, so you shouldn't need to talk to anyone in the village, and you could just launch up back into space immediately, but what should you do? You're alone in this scenario. You're stacked against an inexplicable supernatural occurrence that won't let you die, and as you'll find out sooner rather than later, you have a bit of a time limit. The ship contains a log of information of what you've encountered so far, and notes detailing different points of interest, letting you know if you have to investigate places that you haven't gotten all the information from. And that's good because there is a lot to uncover at almost every corner in this game. If you pick a planet and fly to it, you'll likely come across a number of different landmarks with their own sets of questions and implications that you can start to piece together for a greater story, but it's one that'll undoubtedly involve you hopping to even more planets and getting more puzzle pieces into the mix to even come close to solving. The greatest strength of Outer Wilds is apparent here, and it's that aside from the baseline systems of flying your spacecraft and managing your spacesuit's resources to navigate the world, Outer Wilds isn't a game that relies on unlockable mechanics to encourage progression. It instead relies entirely on your knowledge, and it's something that you will build upon naturally as your time loops rack up. You will not need secret speed boosts to get through a puzzle, nor will you need to pass certain flags in the game to make something allowed to be accessed. You play more like a researcher, approaching these foreign and interesting ideas and locations, absorbing the information either from observation or left behind by some context clues, and you get to make theories that you act on to come to new conclusions. Inevitably, you'll make a wrong call in the wrong spot, and you'll end up dying a horrible death, but really, that doesn't matter. You're probably going to have enough deaths where you're laughing at the outcome more than you are terrified of its prospects. What's the worry of a couple of more of them if you're on the trail towards a greater truth that everyone has been working towards? You're just like the previous explorers that you could see put up into the museum. You're bravely putting yourself out into the unknown in search of greater information, Except now that you have your own unique circumstance, you can push the limit. You can do things that those people would consider too dangerous for people with only one life. You can take it as a trial and error, not being afraid of the outcomes. You could come across previous people's works who couldn't see their visions to the end, and you can give those people a satisfying conclusion to their pursuit of knowledge. Because no matter how many times you burn, you get crushed, you get flattened, suffocated, the whole world explodes in front of you, you just end up waking up on a new day, and you can get right to it and try and do something new. It makes the game this wonderfully pragmatic piece in my mind about recognizing the importance of everything around you and the scale of the universe, putting forth your efforts with the satisfaction from the idea that you will help deliver the payoff that so many people have worked towards together. It's a really nice thought, but it does ask the question of how does it work out today? Sure, it's nice to have a goal you can chip away at every day, but if you were in that position, not a player observing the world, but a whole person placed in that actual scenario, and you do that for maybe 2, 5, 10, 25, maybe in the extremes, 100 individual loops, will you really feel the same way about it each morning? What would your mind do when you're given infinite time to think? In Stars and Time is a game that lives for its characters. You play as Siffrin, the rogue of an RPG party, set the day before the team's final dungeon crawl that'll save the world, in a town called Dormont. The first day is pretty lax with it being your team's prep day for the final journey. You walk around the town and can talk with the villagers, as well as learn a bit more about how you and your party ended up together and what you're actually up against. Throughout which you'll get a great sense of your party's connection. Everyone seems pretty nervous about the task at hand, but are doing their best to keep a chipper mood, with all the conversations being saturated with lighthearted banter that conveys a history between every single person. Following that with a nice dinner and rest, everything is set in place. The party makes for the final castle. You do a standard RPG fare tutorial of item and battle mechanics, and you learn that Siffrin is taking point for the group to actually watch for traps, being prompted to thoroughly investigate suspicious rooms to ensure everyone's safety. Siffrin is a rogue, as previously mentioned, so it's not too long before the room is all checked, and your first trapped room crawl is a complete success. We wake back up at the same meadow. No one but Siffrin batting an eye at what happened. Oh, and the tutorial starts talking to you. Loop, a new friend you've made who's aware of your time loop situation, lays out the groundwork for the unique mechanics of the game going forward. Given this game is a RPG with a lot of dialogue that would make these loops cumbersome, you now have the ability to hold a button to nod off and zoom through previously heard dialogue. Additionally, one of the main equipments obtainable throughout the adventure is memories, which can have a variety of effects varying from highlighting important pickups, starting certain party members with other equipments and abilities instead of their basic starting ones, or making the encounterable enemies run from you in order to save time. Both of these mechanics, mixed with the fact that we choose where we can start each loop up to our current farthest point explored, makes for excellent quality of life for the game. Which is what anyone would normally think, but no. This isn't for quality of life at all. I mean, it probably is, but bear with me. Whereas Outer Wilds lets you substitute yourself in for the main character for the most part, letting you react how you want to information, with other side characters kind of just shrugging off your situation like you're crazy, now you're playing as a character, and this guy's got a lot to say. Him nodding off to skip dialogue isn't just a fun graphic, it's what actually occurs in the world. So holding down the button over something like your friend's dinner scene that you have, makes it so that Siffrin just forgets to eat his own food. That's all well and good for getting to know the character, this is just minor blunders, but aside from that, there's a lot more pressing of an issue. The initial boulder that kills you is switched off by a secret button that was in one of the pillars you had already checked, hidden away better than Siffrin could have looked. Siffrin just didn't see it the first time. Whatever, that's simple enough to check for and isn't that big a deal. It's just a small little button you press every time you go through a loop. But to Siffrin, he starts ragging on himself. He died failing at the job he's supposed to have in this group, and that just destroys him on the inside. The game is littered with these moments, minor human errors from you or the party that just get solved so easily with a single time loop, but the effect it has on Siffrin's morale towards the goal just compounds and compounds with each and every instance, and he gets harsher and harsher on himself with his words to reflect on that. Doesn't matter though, Siffrin's pretty quick to refocus his efforts. After all, this magical scenario is keeping him alive and pushing him towards the goal of saving the world. It doesn't matter how many loops this would take. This is something that is super important to everyone else. It's an invaluable service that needs to be done. After clearing each of the floors, you'll be face to face with the final threat, the King. He is no slouch, that's for sure. It takes a fair couple of investigative loops to find the proper memories and tools you'll need to be able to not be just instantly demolished by him, but infinite time is a pretty good counter to anything, I would say. And it's as simple as that. It took some hardship to get there, but with the King defeated, you meet the head house maiden of the House of Change, and your journey's finally over. Everyone can go home. The game was a little short for an RPG, but there's a lot of similarity to Outer Wilds, I think, pushing yourself to keep going past hardships for the betterment of yourself and the people around you. Another story that's telling you that it's good to set yourself aside and work towards a bigger picture, something that can help you better on down the line. We loop again. The party accomplished the goal they all set out for, and your reward is that you'll do it all again. Siffrin takes this the best, I promise. This switch-up of expectations is really juicy for the story. The mystery of why Siffrin is looping is now open-ended with a bunch of question marks. Loop will end up helping you brainstorm for new ideas and things to try to break the loops, but mixed with how hard he is on himself, Siffrin is just extremely fucking downtrodden. And why blame him? He accomplished his assumed end goal of beating the King through trial after trial, painful death after another painful death, and he's still nowhere closer to the end of his excursion. He's doing everything he can and he's done it right, but sometimes that alone isn't enough to get where you want in life. It's around this time that the 4 other people of his group who have not been aware of the loops the entire time see their friend looking like this and realize something is a bit up. What starts happening here is a telegraphed but really satisfying pivot from the pragmatic and goal-oriented mindset of saving the world via completing a concrete goal into a more fulfilling and emotionally touching story about being vulnerable and present with those that you care about. You listen to each of your friends' woes, ones that they're clammed up about since they're so personal, and you use the time loop to try and find information and tools that can help them overcome their short-term problems. But that's rarely ever going to be enough to solve someone's issues. The actual result of doing all that is that your friends are touched that you care about them enough. They open up further and they vent their problems to Siffrin, and Siffrin returns by opening up about themselves as well. These heart-to-hearts don't solve any problems immediately, but everyone expresses just how much you mean to them, how they enjoy your input and company, your quirks and your jokes, everything about you. The memories you get for these interactions give each party member massive stat boosts and special abilities that could easily mop the floor with even the King, even if that's not what will end up saving you. There's a lot of questions to the future. Even the idea that Siffrin can actually get out of the loops isn't for sure, but at the very least, his friends have and always will be there in his endeavors. Both of these games feel really special to me. I'm potentially interested in giving them dedicated videos later, but this felt like a pretty good encapsulation of what I think they overlap on ideologically. And as I said at the top, there's still a lot of game and substance to uncover if you're interested in buying them. Outer Wilds is a whole DLC I could go on about for hours, and I've covered maybe a third of what ISAT has to offer. There's a big gap between when I played through these two, and both of them gave me a real satisfied feeling by the time they were done, but also fresh perspective on life in a corny way. Being a younger person coming out of college, life does end up feeling like a cycle of waking up, trying to do everything right, and regardless of the outcome, just going to bed and waking up the next day to do it all over again. It's hard to visualize progress in a monotonous loop, and trying to do so as your main focus ends up making you either sad you're not where you want to be, or confused how you're making progress, but not enough progress to matter. It's much more fulfilling to find reason why you do it instead of just the material part of it. Perhaps you enjoy the process and want to hone your craft to see how far you can go, or you want to trudge through it all in service of living for the people around you. When you work more for a purpose and can find drive in the meaning of what you do, each day becomes an opportunity instead of just a reminder of where you are. You will accomplish everything that you want to do and more, but only with time.